I want to begin today with an image, a physical, specific, detailed image. Because the philosophy I'm going to explore today is rooted in the physical, in the material, in the visible, in the tactile reality of things that have been broken and things that have been repaired. And I think beginning with the image grounds us in what the philosophy is actually claiming before we get to the abstract implications. So, you have a ceramic bowl, a beautiful one, made with skill and care and the particular investment of attention that characterizes something made to last. You have used it, it has been present in your daily life. The morning tea, the evening meal, the ordinary accumulating intimacy of a bowl that is part of how you live your days. It has, without ever announcing itself, become part of the furniture of your life, the background beauty of the ordinary. And then it breaks, not gradually, suddenly, a moment of impact, the counter's edge, the floor, and it's in pieces. The beauty is fractured. The function is gone. The thing that was whole is now shards. Now, you have a choice. You can throw the pieces away and find a new bowl. You can attempt to glue it back together invisibly to restore it to something that looks as if it was never broken, to hide the evidence of the shattering beneath the most effective concealment available. Or, and this is the choice that a specific Japanese philosophical and aesthetic tradition chose centuries ago and formalized into an art form and a way of seeing, you can repair it with gold. Not to hide the breaks, to illuminate them, to trace the exact line of every fracture with lacquer mixed with gold or silver or platinum, and to create from the broken thing something that could not exist in its current form without having been broken. Something that is more beautiful, not despite the breaks but through them. Something that carries the history of its shattering as part of its beauty rather than as a shame to be concealed. This is Kintsugi, from the Japanese kin, meaning gold, and tsugi, meaning joinery. Gold, golden joinery. The art of repairing what is broken with gold. Welcome to the Grief Lab. I'm Sylvia Turner. New episodes every week on Spotify and YouTube. We are continuing our series on living death grief, the grief that has no funeral. And today we are entering the philosophical territory of repair, not recovery, not restoration, repair. The distinction matters enormously, and I want to spend this entire episode on it. Subscribe, share this series, and leave a rating. These conversations grow every time you pass them on, and there are people in your life who need this specific episode, who are sitting with the broken pieces and trying to decide what to do with them. Let me establish first what Kintsugi is not, because I think the philosophical content of this tradition is frequently sentimentalized in ways that undermine its actual depth and utility. Kintsugi is not the claim that everything happens for a reason. It does not assert that the bowl was supposed to break. It does not suggest that the breaking was necessary or planned or part of a design that, understood correctly, reveals the break to have been a blessing. The bowl broke because it fell. That is the whole of the causal story. There is no further meaning embedded in the event itself. Kintsugi is not the silver lining. It does not say that something good came out of the breaking in a way that justifies or compensates for the break. The bowl is not better because it broke. The breaking was a loss. The original wholeness, whatever beauty it had, is gone. What exists now is something different, something that could not exist without the breaking. but that is not a reward for it or a consolation for it, simply a different thing. And kintsugi is not the instruction to be grateful for your suffering. It does not say that the person who broke your bowl was actually doing you a favor by revealing the gold within you. The framing takes a beautiful philosophical tradition and weaponizes it in service of the very minimization of suffering that this series is explicitly pushing against. The person who broke the bowl is not an agent of the kintsugi process. They are simply the cause of the break. What happens after the break, whether the pieces are thrown away or glued invisibly or repaired with gold, is entirely the work of the person whose bowl was broken. What Kintsugi actually says is this: a broken thing is not necessarily a ruined thing. The break is real. The loss of the original wholeness is real. But the decision about what to do with the broken pieces is not predetermined by the breaking. It remains completely and entirely with the person holding the pieces. And one of the things that can be done with broken pieces, not the only thing, but one of the things, is to repair them in a way that makes the breaks visible and beautiful. That integrates the history of the shattering into the thing itself as a form of beauty and a form of testimony that creates from the broken thing something that is irreplaceably and unmistakably itself, precisely because of what it has been through. Applied to the living death grief of betrayal and financial ruin and identity collapse, Kintsugi offers something that I believe is one of the most clinically and philosophically honest frameworks for the later stages of grief work that exists. It says, the self that was shattered does not need to be reconstructed to its pre-shattering state in order to be whole again. In fact, the attempt to reconstruct it exactly as it was, to act as if the shattering did not happen, to conceal the breaks rather than integrate them, produces a result that is more fragile, not less than the repaired version. The invisible repair, which looks whole from the outside, but which sits on unconsolidated grief and unacknowledged shattering, is vulnerable to re-breaking in ways that the gold repair is not. The gold repair, the self that has processed the grief of the shattering, that has integrated the breaks rather than concealing them, that knows where it was broken and has built genuine strength along exactly those lines, is a different kind of wholeness. Not the original, not pretending to be the original, but something real and durable, and in the Kintsugi sense, beautiful in a way that the unbroken original could never have been. I want to apply this specifically to the 3 dimensions of living death grief that we have been exploring in the series. In the grief of betrayal and shattered assumed world, the Kintsugi process looks like this. The breaks are the specific shattering of the 3 core assumptions: the benevolence of the world, the meaningfulness of events, the worth of the self. Each of these breaks is real. Each needs to be fully acknowledged and processed. And then, in the repair, in the slow, careful, gold-worked rebuilding of a relationship to reality that can hold both what was true before the shattering and what is known after it, the breaks become lines of strength rather than points of vulnerability. The person who has processed the grief of an assumed world, shattering does not rebuild a naive assumed world. They rebuild a more sophisticated one that holds the knowledge of the world's genuine complexity, that it is neither uniformly benevolent or uniformly hostile, that events are neither perfectly meaningful or purely random, that the self's worth is not guaranteed by its own goodness, but is something that must be actively asserted and protected in a world that does not automatically honor it. This more sophisticated world, harder one, more honestly calibrated, more genuinely resilient, is the gold in the cracks. Not a reward for the suffering, but a quality of understanding that could not exist without the shattering. In the grief of financial ruin, the Kintsugi process looks like the gradual construction of a relationship to money and to the future that is simultaneously more realistic and more grounded than the one that preceded the loss. The pre-loss relationship to financial security in many cases held assumptions about the reliability of institutions and the reliability of trusted people that the loss has revealed to be inaccurate. The post-loss relationship, worked through grief and therapy and the slow rebuilding of a new financial relationship to life, can be more honest, more boundaried, more genuinely protected by appropriate skepticism and appropriate vigilance without being paralyzed by fear. The breaks are the specific vulnerabilities that the fraud or the loss exposed. The gold is the specific wisdom about financial risk and institutional trust and the appropriate limits of financial vulnerability that only the experience of the loss could have taught. In the grief of identity loss after manipulation, the Kintsugi process is perhaps the most intimate and the most profound. The breaks are the specific ways in which the self was fractured by the manipulation, the perceptions that were undermined, the expressions of selfhood that were suppressed, the relational capacities that were distorted, and the gold, the repair that makes the breaks not just healed but beautiful, is the specific self-knowledge that emerges from the work of reclaiming those perceptions, recovering those expressions, and rebuilding those relational capacities on a foundation of genuine self-trust that the manipulation paradoxically created the conditions for. The person who has done the full grief work of identity recovery after manipulation often describes something like this. I know myself in a way I never knew myself before. I know where I'm strong and where I'm vulnerable. I know what I need in a relationship and what I will not accept. I know the difference between genuine care and performed care in a way that someone who has never been through this cannot know. I know my own perceptions that are trustworthy because I have tested them against the hardest evidence and found them to be reliable. That self-knowledge is Kintsugi. It is the gold in the cracks of the self. It does not justify what was done. It is not a reward. It is the work, honest, painstaking, grief processed work of a person who took the broken pieces of their own self and decided against all the pressure to simply throw them away or conceal the breaks invisibly, to repair them with gold, to make the breaks visible, to make the shattering part of the story rather than a shame to be hidden. Let me close with the most important thing about Kintsugi as a grief philosophy. The bowl is still a bowl. The self is still a self. The breaking did not end the story of the object. It simply interrupted it, devastatingly, unwantedly, at a cost that was real. And what comes after the interruption? The decision about what to do with the pieces, the quality of the repair, the decision to make the breaks visible rather than invisible is entirely and completely in the hands of the person holding them. You are holding the pieces. The repair is yours. And the gold, the specific, irreplaceable, and unmistakably earned beauty of a self that has been broken and repaired with full knowledge of every crack, is yours too, when you are ready, in your own time, at your own pace, with the support you need to do the work properly. The bowl that has been repaired with Kintsugi is the most valuable bowl in the collection, not because it was broken, but because of what it took to put it back together. This has been the Grief Lab. I'm Sylvia Turno. Every week on Spotify and YouTube, share this with someone who is holding the pieces and has not yet decided what to do with them. This episode might help them see the gold.